Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. We come to you on this Saturday night, and a lot of you are pinching yourselves after watching that outcome on the Mike Francesa channel, on the Bet Rivers Network, on YouTube. Let's start with game two. When you win 15 games, you're a one seed. You have been at the top of the league the entire season. Now, at the end of the game tonight, Tom Brady starts talking about, well, they lost all these players to injury. And hey, we knew that before the game started. They were still a 9-point favorite going in because we knew what they could possibly do with that offense. What we didn't know was they would, number one, turn the ball over all night, have the trouble stopping a first-year quarterback who now has won back-to-back games on the road. You thought they'd get a couple of stops. I thought it'd be a high-scoring game, but did not. And I thought they could get it back to a cover, but I did not think they would not get stops. And they really didn't get a lot of stops. And to come apart at the seams, this team has been so good, so tough, so resourceful, so reliant on that offense, had a swagger all year. They looked beaten to me in the third quarter, even when they were only down 3 points, they looked beaten. And then to have 12 men on the field when they had a chance for a stop, and then have a wide receiver throw the ball, that's panic stuff. That's panic moves, not 15-win moves. So the Lions and their head coach just melted away when they were pushed to the brink. They went right over the side, and now have as painful a division loss as I can remember in a very long time. Listen, we would have been stunned if the Texans beat the Chiefs today, as much as we would have been by the Lions, but I wouldn't have been more so. I would have thought, hey, Chiefs have struggled on offense all year. They've run out of gas. They're just not the same team offensively. The tackles who were bad today could have been worse. This was stunning. It was stunning because of the way. Now, Washington's not a good defensive team. And when Detroit held onto the ball, they moved it all night. I mean, they had over 500 yards of offense in the game. But you cannot turn the ball over. You cannot win a playoff game. I don't even think it's humanly possible to win a playoff game when you're -5 in the turnover department. I don't even think it's possible. I think the odds would be about 100 to 1 to win a playoff game. You would be in the close to the 100 percentile of trying to win a playoff game when you are -5 turnovers. I think 3 puts you at like 92% lose. 5 has got to put you close to 99% lose. I mean, 5, you're giving away 5 possessions, empty possessions in the game, and you can't stop the other team. Biggest drive of that game was after the Lions scored in the third quarter. Washington took the ball and kept it forever and took it into the fourth quarter and got that touchdown. That was the difference. They had to stop them there. Now, they almost got an onside kick, and give Ertz credit. He made an incredible play. That could have been an onside kick. They still would have lost, though. Even if they had gotten the end zone on the last drive, they would have lost. I mean, they weren't getting close to any stops. They didn't have an answer. Losing Robinson early in the game hurt them. They were banged up in the secondary. We knew they were vulnerable, but I thought, honestly, going in, that Detroit would score 45 points or more tonight. That was my thought. I thought the game would be reversed. I thought it would be 45-31. I actually made it 45-28 before the game. Or the other day, I wrote down 45-20. I wrote down 23-13 for the Chiefs, and it was 23-14, and we know what happened at the end of that game. I wrote down 45-28 for the Lions. Now it was 45-31 for Washington. First of all, let's give Washington credit for being opportunistic on defense, for having their quarterback be again very, very cool, hitting big pass plays, doing the things he had to do to move the ball, making the plays he had to make to move the ball. He did a wonderful job. He really did. And the Lions, let's be honest, they threw the ball away with both hands. Goff's had a great couple of years. He had a great year. He still played the worst Super Bowl I've ever seen. And this game is not going to be one he's going to, put in the scrapbook. He turned the ball over on a play he shouldn't have on the fumble. The pick he threw was an out-and-out disaster for a pick six. Now, that should not have been a pick six, as we know, because the Washington cheap-shotted the quarterback as they were returning the interception. That should have negated the touchdown. It should have negated the pick six. It should have been Washington's ball because it was a post-interception foul, but it was a dirty, dirty hit. He will be fine, but he did not get penalized. So it's funny to watch him take a play where he almost got his head knocked off, and then Mahomes gets flags when anyone breathes on him. But that's the difference in the status. That's all there is to it. They want Mahomes to be standing upright, and you don't even have to hit him to get a penalty. You just have to make it look like you might threaten him, and you get a penalty. Those penalties on him today were absurd. Those two penalties against him, the first one was bad. The second one was a mockery to the sport because you had two Texans collide, neither hit him. And then he has the goal after that to try and take a dive on the sideline and try and draw another one. He's already gotten two he didn't deserve. He wants a third. Hey, when he's going to dance around in the middle of the field and try to give players, I'm going to throw a leg out here. I'm going to take a hip here. I'm going to make a move here. You can't then, if he doesn't give himself up, you can't then treat him like he's a quarterback. You got to treat him like he's a running back. They have to re-look. They have to take a good look, and review what they're looking at here because this is a joke. That was very, very tough on the Texans there, who were pretty good defensively today. Let's be honest. Spags just decided, I'm going to blitz you. Well, I don't want to get to that game yet because there's a lot to get to in that game. There's a lot to get to. So I'll get to that later. Let's stay here with this unbelievable. Put this in perspective now. Lion fans have waited forever. I've been wanting to see what would happen when that city could wrap its arms around an NFC champion and go to a Super Bowl and have 2 weeks build up. They've been dreaming about that since they lost last year in the playoffs. Now they have to make the entire innocent climb again, as Pat Riley would call it, through the offseason, through training camp, through the regular season, back to the playoffs to try and get to the same spot again after winning 15 games and going down in the divisional playoff game at home where they were scalping tickets for a fortune. It was the hottest ticket that anyone's seen in Detroit in a million years. The place was absolutely on fire at the start of the night tonight. They wanted to love this team. They wanted to wrap their arms around this team and celebrate this right to New Orleans. And now they are just flat on their back as a franchise. This is a tough one. They're going to have from the head coach through the quarterback, through the coordinators, through the owner, through everybody, including the equipment manager, to the ball boy. They are going to have a hard time getting out of bed tomorrow. This was as devastating a divisional loss as you could suffer. The Lions would have had a hard time if they lost an NFC title game in their building in a heartbreaking way. To lose this game to this Washington team, which was, let's be honest, not a good defensive team. The Lions knew they were going to score a bunch of points today. Gibbs could do whatever he wanted on the field today. I mean, he was unbelievable. I understand they wanted to get Montgomery back, but why would you even bother getting Montgomery back if Gibbs is going to play like Gale Sayers? Put him out there. But the pressure was getting, for the first time, the pressure was getting to the Lions. It was getting to their coaching staff. It was getting to everybody in the second quarter of that game when they realized this was not going to be a coronation. Early on, they figured, boom, boom, boom. Now they're up, and now they're down. And now they're down 10 after the pick six, and they're like, wait a second. This is not what we signed up for. This is not what we expected. But let's just get back to business. If they could have shaken off the pick six, if they just had scored before the half. But there he is throwing a terrible pick in the end zone before the half. He's already got a field goal in the box, which at least would have given them some momentum going into the third quarter, even though they weren't getting the ball first. But he comes out and throws a terrible pick before the half. Problem was those turnovers. One setting up an automatic score. So now you've seesawed the game where it's not back and forth. It's back. They score back. As soon as somebody scores twice before the other guy gets the ball, that changes the whole back and forth of the game. They could have lived in a back and forth game where maybe the last team won who had the ball. They got off schedule because they had 5 empty trips in the game. 5 turnovers. While Washington did not turn the ball over. Add in 12 men on the field on 4th down. And then trying a trick play where your wide receivers throwing the ball. You are a juggernaut offensively. You outscored the other teams in the league this year by over 200 points, and you're taking the ball out of your quarterback's hands in the last 10, 15 minutes of the game? What are you, out of your mind? How do you think you got here? That's what I mean about coming unglued. The Lions not only turned it over 5 times, they came unglued against a rookie quarterback. Now, there were 1,000 yards in this game. There were 600 in the first half, first time in history. 600, highest scoring second quarter ever. 600 in the, the Broncos once, I guess they scored 42 in the quarter because the Broncos once scored 35 in the quarter. The Super Bowl. So, I guess 42 is the all-time record, but 621 yards of offense in the first half of this game. And at half, I thought the Lions probably still would find a way to win. I didn't think they'd cover, but I thought they would win. And, those empty trips, the turnovers, and the inability to get a stop or enough stops. And the ball didn't bounce right. I mean, the guy made a great onside kick, and Ertz made an incredible play. I mean, he took the ball off the ground, with his bare hands, and the ball was bouncing away from him. He just grabbed it in midair and made a recovery. It was a great recovery. But I have to admit, at that point, I didn't even think they'd win if they had even had that. Devastating. Nothing less. The word is devastating for the fallout from this Detroit loss. This is as bad as it gets. It will be hard for them to recover especially if they're stripped of their coordinators, which is a distinct possibility. And I don't think anyone's going to look at it tonight and say, "Oh, I'm not giving Aaron Glenn a job now because of how many points he gave up tonight." He did have a lot of walking wounded. He did lose a key guy 2 plays into the game with an elbow injury, and he did have deep backs limping off the entire game, but they still stunk. They missed how many tackles? I mean, the touchdown on the McCarron play was a joke. An absolute joke. You cannot tackle like that and win a playoff game. You cannot turn the ball over 5 times and win a playoff game. You cannot have 12 men on the field on 4th down in the red zone and win a playoff game. You can't have your wide receiver throwing the football in the 4th quarter to the other team and win a playoff game. And you know what? The Lions didn't win a playoff game. Unfortunately, they're still the Lions. But now they've added heartache to the menu. Now, the first game, give Kansas City credit for their defense, but the offensive line for Houston has been weak all year. Spags said, "Hey, I know they can't block my guys." You saw times where they blitzed 5 times in a row. Rarely do you blitz the other team in the playoffs 5 plays in a row. I mean, they blitzed, they sacked. I mean, that's basically what went on. I know Kelsey made some plays, and they didn't cover Kelsey in big spots. They really left him wide open. Yes, they took away the wide receivers, but they did not take away Kelsey. But do I see some vulnerabilities in the Chiefs? I do. I tell you, those tackles are a problem. Thuney's a great guard. He's not a great tackle. He might be an acceptable tackle. He's not a great tackle. The tackle stinks. So they're dreadful at the tackle spots. That could cause, just like we knew the Lion defense could cost them a Super Bowl. I did not think it would happen in this round. But I don't even think it would have, even as bad as their defense was tonight, I think they would have survived it if they didn't turn the ball over. If they were even in the turnover department, I think they probably would have eked out a win. But -5, including a pick 6, and the other mistakes, and you can't do anything about it. There's just nothing to do about it. The Lions outgained them for the game. A lot of it was camouflage late when they're trying to make that last drive. You know, they're giving up plays. They're just not going to tighten up until they get into the red zone. Then they throw a net and he throws another pick. It's a bad loss, a stunning loss, a bad loss. I'm sad that they lost. I wanted to see them play in the NFC title game. I wanted to see them play in the Super Bowl just to experience it with the Lion fans and see how they reacted and everything. It was going to be fun. I'm a little disappointed that happened. And it's easy to root for Campbell, but boy, he had a bad night. His quarterback had a bad night. The team had a terrible night. Now, the first game, let me say this. Houston played pretty well. They didn't handle the blitz well in the second half. They moved the ball pretty well the entire game. I mean, they outgained the Chiefs by about 100 yards. Bad specials. They got destroyed on specials. The start of the game, I never saw anything in my life like I saw at the start of the game. I would have thrown that kid so far off my sideline after he has the goal to take his helmet off on this and then push the coach. Are we serious here? What are we running? He throws his helmet off on the first play of the game after they return a kick for, almost for a touchdown. You throw your helmet off, get a 15-yard penalty, and then push the coach on the sideline. What are we talking about? But they had a nightmare. That play, they gave him a short field for the first 3, but they held him to 3. They miss a field goal, but that was not their kicker's fault. That was the head coach's fault, and that turned the game around. That was such a dumb mistake. What are you thinking? You're in this game. You're in it completely. It's 4th and 10. Punt the ball. Instead, you're going to – oh, excuse me. I'm getting the other one. You're lining up for a 55-yard field goal with an 8-degree wind chill and a 17-mile-an-hour wind. That's like kicking a 68-yard field goal in the normal conditions. They're going to have the ball right at the middle of the field. What happens? Misses the kick by a mile, and they score a touchdown. What were you thinking? And then 10 minutes left, you go for it on 4th and 10. Punt the ball down the field. You're down 8 points. Sometimes you get in these games and you watch these coaches and you say, are they serious? So their special teams, don't say he missed the first field goal. That's 55 yards with a 17-mile-an-hour wind, 8-degree wind chill. It's not like kicking a regular football on a September day. Then they miss another field goal, which obviously could have covered the point spread. And then they miss an extra point, which completely disheartened the Texans because they were about to tie the game. I know it's 1 point. I know they're still in the game. That was crushing to that team, missing that extra point. They had battled so hard. They were going to get back from 13-3 to 13 up. That was going to be a huge lift for them, and he misses the extra point. That killed them. It killed them. You saw their sideline. It crushed them. Bad officiating, bad coaching decisions, and bad specials. The 2 Mahomes penalties were a farce. The first one was bad. The second one was a mockery to the sport. I mean, come on now. Mahomes has enough advantages. You don't have to give him all these advantages. I mean, it's just a joke. That was ridiculous. The second one was an absolute embarrassment for the league. An embarrassment. They didn't even touch him. And then, of course, you have – listen, if you lost this game because you laid 9.5, you have one of those gambling stories that you like to tell forever, that we're up 11 and you had a big bet on the Chiefs. And Andy decides with 15 seconds left to run it out of the end zone. I shouldn't laugh. Okay, but that's about as bad as it gets. Those are the scenes. I was in Vegas once for the NCAA tournament when the underdog was covering the whole game. They were like a 10, 11 point underdog. And they got down like 6 with like 20 seconds left. I mean, it was, you were a lock with the dog. And then they got like 3 technical fouls on the bench. And they were shooting free throws for like 20 minutes. And the people they were going. So the guys who wound up covering with the favorite were like dancing on top of the chairs. And the other guys were like, crying in their soup. And it was one of the crazy scenes I ever saw during the NCAA tournament. And I always think about what's going on there, like at Caesar's Palace or one of those other places where, or any of the hotels. And there's one of those crazy things. Like when he turned and headed for the end zone, the people who had bet the Chiefs were just apoplectic. They had nuts. And the people who had just lived through that missed field goal where they're about to get their backdoor cover. And now he does that. And again, it mattered when you bet it because Kansas City was clearly 8.5 this week. They were clearly 9 for days this week. And my understanding is at times they were 9.5. I saw them at 8.5. I saw him at 9. I didn't see him at 9.5, but a lot of people quoted 9.5, so I'm sure there were 9.5 around. I saw a couple of the final scores had 9.5 in it. So I'm sure there were 9.5s around. So you could have won it with Kansas City, pushed it, or lost it. And if you lost it, you got one of those heartbreak hotel stories that lives forever. As Andy hightails it for the end zone and takes the safety, with 15 seconds left. Came away. Listen, Kansas City is going to be a tough out. They know how to play these games, but they have a serious vulnerability now. The problem with the tackles keeps them from getting the ball down the field with any proficiency. And the tackles are a distinct problem. Now you've weakened the line a little bit because you've taken a great guard and moved him out to tackle. And he's not a great tackle, but he's going to be better than what you could possibly put out there. They are woefully weak at the other tackle. I mean, he's a penalty machine. Kelsey had a good game today, probably the best game he's had all year. But let's be honest, on that 50-yard play, what was the coverage? There was nobody in the same zip code as him. They took away the wideouts, but they left Kelsey wide open today. He was so wide open that he didn't have to dump it to the backs like he usually does. Kansas City wins these games. Now, if I were Kansas City, I'd be rooting for Buffalo. And this is not to take anything away from Josh Allen, but I'm of this belief that if Baltimore gets through this game tomorrow, and I don't know that they will, because they're going to run into a very tough place to play against a great player who plays great at home, who plays great in the cold weather. I have great respect for him. I have respect for the Bills. Baltimore is playing better than them. And Baltimore has a 1-2 punch with Henry and Jackson that is really, really scary. If they survive tomorrow, they might not lose. I could see them rolling into Arrowhead and winning. I call it Arrowhead. I shouldn't call it Arrowhead anymore. It's not Arrowhead. But rolling into Kansas City and winning. I could see that happening. I would be leery of Buffalo on the road unless they show me a marked improvement on defense tomorrow against Baltimore. They're going to get a break with the weather, it looks like. Not snow, but very cold weather. And Jackson still has to prove he can win a big game on the road. Let's be honest, he doesn't have a great postseason career. So he still has something to prove. He has more to prove than Josh does as far as the playoffs go. But one of them's going to Kansas City. They both go there with a chance. I think Baltimore goes there with a better chance. The NFC now, hey, I mean, this is a great thing for the Eagles. We're going to get a weather break tomorrow. They deserve to be favored against the Rams, but the Rams are dangerous. Washington is more dangerous because Washington's already beaten them this year. Washington's not going to stop them, but are they going to stop Washington? Nobody looks like they can stop Washington now. And the quarterback is playing out of his mind. He really is. So, I mean, would I be surprised if they went on the road and won again? Hey, I have to admit, I did not think they'd win tonight. So I wasn't there for the wedding. So I don't want to be there for the funeral. But, you had to respect what you watched tonight from them. And from the quarterback, especially from the quarterback. He's a cool customer. And he's hard to defend. And he likes these games. You can see it. They're playing with house money. And he likes these games. He's having fun out there. He's picking up defenders in the fourth quarter. I mean, come on. I mean, think about that. He's kicking my rear end and he's picking me up. I mean, give me a break. How much of that can I stand? He's gonna beat me and then he's gonna be nice to me. I mean, he's done a heck. I mean, hey, he's had some season. Remarkable, remarkable. This one really threw the NFC just into craziness because I don't think a lot of us expected the Lions to get beat tonight. Not the way they've played off. Not after what they did to Detroit. I mean, it did to Minnesota, and I could see it being a shootout. That wouldn't drive me crazy that it was a shootout tonight, but I didn't expect them to implode. I didn't expect their quarterback to implode the way he did tonight. 5 turnovers at home against a team that has no defense. These were pilot error. These weren't this team. I mean, they made a couple of decent plays in the secondary, but this was pilot error. So now we have the Rams and Philly tomorrow. Rams deserve to be favored. The weather's conducive to them. But remember, you're going against a coach and a quarterback and some skilled people who are extremely dangerous. Take that into account. Eagles have a big physical edge, though, with their offensive line and their running game against the Ram defense, which is good, and their linemen are good, but they're smallish. And then the game, where somebody's sending a really good team and a really great quarterback into Kansas City to try to keep Kansas City out of the Super Bowl again. I mean, look, what Kansas City's done is utterly remarkable. Teams don't win I mean, this is amazing what they've done, what Andy's done, what Mahomes has done, what Jones has done, what Kelsey's done, what Spags has done. Remarkable stuff. They deserve all the credit in the world. We're looking at something very, very special. If you don't think it's hard to get to the Super Bowl, ask Detroit. Ask them tonight if it's hard to get to the Super Bowl. See you tomorrow.